sorry, I've not really used Microsoft. Yeah, okay, I think I got it.
Yes, ma'am, your screen is visible now.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. I'm Supriya Bhuwalka, and thank you, Dr. Divya, for that kind introduction. I'm a little out of place here because I know that all of you are professors and you're like teaching, graduate students. And here I am. I'm not a professor. I don't have a doctor in front of my name. And we teach AI to really, really young children from grade 3 onwards, actually, which is 8 years and up. The topic that I chose to speak about today is ethical AI. And I would like all of us to be a little interactive and, at any time, I would request you that please jump in, ask questions, answer questions, because I don't think ethics of AI can be taught one way or spoken about one way. So before we get into what is AI ethics, can somebody here tell me what is ethics? Anybody can unmute and just answer. What do you think is ethics? How would you define ethics? No one?
Okay, so I request the participants to please make this session a bit interactive because I know, like, unlike other sessions, this is something different. So let's make it a bit interactive. So kindly unmute and answer if you have the answer for the question.
Do
Hello,
you
ma'am.
think? Yeah, go ahead. Thank you so much.
Yeah, ethics are kind of rules or something.
And who do you think defines those rules?
The one who sets up the like software or someone who finds like
Oh,
who's the founder of it.
okay. So you are defining that the ethics would be decided by the head of the company, or the development team. But I'm looking at something bigger. That is it determined by law, by the law of the country? Do you guys agree? If it was so, then we would not have had the slavery or the apartheid movement, right? If ethics was constrained just to law. What else do you think? Who else do you think would be defining ethics in a community? You guys must be wondering, this lady is used to teaching children. Now she's treating us like children. I'm really sorry, but that's our style of working with kids. And we find it very engaging because then we get different points of view. So one more answer. What do you think is ethics? If it's not determined by law, the gentleman here said that it could be what the head of the company decides, but that those are again limiting, right? What else do you think could be ethics? Do you think it should be determined by society? Do you see the flaw there? Do you see where this was constrained? If we allowed ethics to be decided by what the society thinks is right, we would not have Nazi Germany, right? We would not have had the prosecution of the Jews. If it was determined by religion, would that mean that people who are not religious don't have ethics? Would we have the caste system in India? No. And again, here I'm taking the call, but anywhere anybody needs to jump in, please refute me or give your point of view. And if we said that ethics was determined by our own personal right or wrong, that itself is not correct, because in that case, it may not be aligned to the greater good. So, what really is ethics? And what I found as to be a very good definition was that ethics should be a combination of two things. Firstly, ethics should be defined as the terms in terms of rights, obligations, benefits to society, fairness, or specific virtues. It is the right to life, the right to freedom from injury, and the right to privacy. Uh, Is my slide going down? I'm sorry. Is everybody able to see my slides?
Yes, ma'am. We are in the definition of ethics now.
Okay. Okay, I was just checking. Um, so, so the definition of ethics is the rights to life, the right to freedom, the right from injury, and the right to privacy. And more importantly, I like the fact that ethics is defined as a constant study of reflection and alignment to what is right for the greater good. That part I think is very, very important, to keep reflecting that is my right and wrong actually for the greater good. But then why AI and ethics? AI, as we all know, is this development of this technology that is being made by humans and which is being used to make decisions for us, on us, with or without our knowledge. It's making really, really important decisions, right? That is affecting whether we'll get credit, what insurance premium we'll pay, whether we'll get that job that we want, whether our kids will go to college. And what the scary part about uh, the decisions that are made based on the predictions by AI is that people trust AI because they believe it's made by a machine, therefore it's trustworthy, therefore it has no bias. The word AI itself, sometimes I think, as others say, should be not artificial intelligence, but augmenting intelligence. It should be used to augment, how human intelligence is working rather than replacing it. Everybody agrees with me up to here? So
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, thank you so much. What is ethical AI design? So ethical AI design is when you combine AI with ethics, align it with the values and the principles of a society or a community it affects, and we also build in a system of self-reflection and a system in the AI model itself so that it can be tweaked as and where we find flaws or biases in it. In order for AI ethics, to be working, there are 5 components or proponents that one should be looking at. And we made an easy acronym to remember called FIRST. I also wanted to just point out here that, like AI ethics is also a field that is growing today. And I have got a lot of my research primarily from IBM and Microsoft, but I know that there is no single grail of truth here today. So the first 5 things that we are going to talk about are: first, fairness, inclusiveness, reliability, security, and transparency. And the other thing I wanted to speak about is that we are seeing that technology is growing very rapidly. We have to imbibe ethics of AI in it to keep our people safe. And at the same time, we also need governance, which is also playing catch up worldwide. And there's no single governance, which is, sort of like an umbrella rule for everyone. So that's another thing to keep in mind. So when we talk about fairness, what do we mean? Fairness, as the word itself defines, is a flip side of bias, and it means that the data set that we work with should be fair. As all of you may have, read in the papers that AI tends to favor white male over other ethnicities, other genders, other skin colors. Why is that? It was because the initial data sets were trained with white men. Of course, that is changing today. And the reason it is changing is because somebody has said, hey, this AI is not fair. Why am I not in it? There's a very interesting story, of this researcher from MIT called Joy Buolamini. She also started the Algorithmic Justice League, and she was making AI model, in her graduate work, where she wanted to make a filter for her face. And she realized that the AI could not detect her face because she was a black lady. The AI worked on all her friends, but it wouldn't work on her. And she happened to have a white mask, which she wore, and then the AI would work. And then she realized that that was because the AI was extremely biased. And the scary thing is that, when these AIs were put out in the world, they were being used to make decisions. We all read about, Black people being unfairly, arrested, because the law enforcements were using an app by Amazon called Recognition, which was inaccurately, labeling people as, criminals. Judges in the US were using algorithms, which were deciding how long a person should be kept in jail, what the chances of them being a second offender were, and these were all biased algorithms which were making really, really, wrong predictions and were being used in the real world. I mean, it's crazy, right? So, in order to look at the fairness, we have to look at the flip side and what are the biases that can creep in and how we should be mindful. We all are educators here, and it is our responsibility to study this deeply, be aware, and sort of figure out how can we sort of tweak the AI that we are using so that it can be more inclusive. So, what are the kind of biases that I would like to talk about? The biases that are in the data, biases that are in the model, and biases that come in through the humans themselves. So, the first kind of bias that I'd like to talk about is historical bias. These are all real life examples, right? You may have seen that on Google, if you make a search, she is a doctor, he is a nurse, you translate it into another language, and then you translate it back into English. And you know what it has done? Can anybody guess? If I write, she is a doctor, he is a nurse, I translate it maybe into Hungarian and I translate it back into English. Do you know what the AI does? It actually switches the pronouns again. It gives you back, he is a doctor, she is a nurse. This is because of the vector embeddings that we have inbuilt into AI. This is an historical bias. And these are the kind of biases which are causing, you know, more men to be recruited over women, more, children who have never gone to college, them not getting admission into college. Again, I know a lot of my examples are US based, but it's just because there's more literature out here, from the US. So please pardon the non-localization of the material in this talk. And these are all real life applications that we're seeing, which are being used and which are being making decisions, right, for people. So that was historical bias. Representation bias is when you are collecting the data using a particular kind of mode, which another socioeconomic group may not have the ability to use. And so you have a representation bias. Measurement bias is when you have predictive policing. I like the example I gave you about the judges using the algorithm in order to know what the chances of a person being a second offender would be. That would be an example of a measurement bias. So these are examples of data biases. What are the biases that we see in modeling? There are two kinds of biases that we see. One is evaluation and the other is aggregation. An evaluation bias happens when you try to fit a model onto a certain population which is not representative of the entire population. An example for this is there was a research done where the researcher wanted to see that what was the probability of the people in her community coming to vote the next day. And she made an AI model, and the AI model had a 90% accuracy. But she did in a local community. When she applied the same AI model to the larger state, the accuracy fell to 55% because a larger state was not representative of the smaller, community that she had chosen. So that's an evaluation bias. An example of aggregation bias is, as we all know in medicine, different ethnicities, they have different thresholds, for their diabetes, for different diseases. So if you try to fit the same model over different ethnicities, would you get the right result? No. So the idea is to be very mindful of the data set you're using, seeing the thresholds and not trying to make one size fits all. Another example of the aggregation bias is if you are trying to compare the salary of professionals and the number of years that they have worked. A classic example is an athlete versus any other profession. An athlete earns his maximum salary or his maximum earnings are at a younger age, which depreciates with the passage of time, versus all of us, where we earn more with experience. The reason we are talking about the different kind of biases is because it's important to sort of know where all we need to have our check and balances. And the bias in the human review, this is another word for the confirmation bias, where no matter what the algorithm predicts and the human says who's going to make the decision, that but I know from my experience that this is not possible, so this prediction is wrong. Now this is a good thing and a bad thing, because we want the human to be part of the decision process, but we also want the human to try and be mindful that his decision is affecting other humans, right? So that was fairness or bias. The second part of ethics of AI is inclusiveness. Now, what I have found is that as people are becoming more AI literate, companies are realizing that they need to be more inclusive. They are, making an effort to incorporate, aspects in the AI models, which is going to be helpful to the greater society. So a classic example is if we all have used Amazon, maybe a couple of years back to today, when Alexa, when Alexa first came into the Indian market, it could not understand us. It only understood a very, very American English accent. Today, it can understand so many dialects, so many languages. That's inclusiveness. Twitter. Twitter recognizes that different people speaking different languages may be interested only in their particular language tweets. So they have an ability for you to switch on and see tweets only in your language. Today in India, we are a country, with such a heterogeneous society, right? With so many dialects. We are the ones who have to build in inclusiveness for so many aspects. It's not just for visual disability, auditory disability, right? It's also to encompass these languages and other cultural, diversities. So Twitter has a little, toggle for you to understand, for you to see tweaks in different languages. It also has personalized these icons so that you can relate to them. There is a very interesting app called Algahuka, which you can train it with your face and it will make a Renaissance painting of your photo. But if you use Algahuka, no matter what your skin color is, the Renaissance painting will make it very light skin colored. Can you relate to that? Would you want to use that? Is that representative of your community? No. But Pinterest, on the other hand, was more inclusive and had a toggle bar which showed you the different skin colors. So the chances of a user using a more inclusive AI app is higher. Simple things like WhatsApp emojis, right? We have options of different colors of a thumbs up because they're being inclusive. I don't know whether you all have seen this in Microsoft. Just as, like they have the spell check and the grammar check, they also have an inclusivity check, where if you turn it on, you can ensure that the documents you're writing are more inclusive. I had not discovered this. I don't know about any of you. Another very interesting fact, when Biden came into power, he rejigged the White House website and he had another checkbox put in there for gender pronouns to be inclusive of the LBGQT community. That's a powerful move. It's really saying that, I recognize you, I support you, I include you. Another really cool app where I have seen that people are using this whole process of design thinking empathy to be inclusive is by an app called Noom. which is being used by first responders. First responders are people whose day doesn't start at a 7 or a 8 o'clock. It must be starting in the middle of the night. So their breakfast and lunch and dinner are at different times. Noom was an app which was made for first responders so that they can have reminders according to when the day starts. This, I think, are all amazing examples of inclusiveness. Reliability. Here I would also like to share with you. There is a lady that I really admire. She's a CTO of Google. Her name is Cassie Kozyrov, and she makes these really nice YouTube videos of making friends with machine learning. And she had a very interesting anecdote to share for reliability with the Titanic. The Titanic was considered unsinkable. A captain had actually said that only God can sink it, or maybe even God can't sink it, and yet it sank. Do you know why? Because people believed that it was perfect. In all our lives, we have a person, a child, maybe a colleague who we believe is really good. You don't really have to have checks and balances with them. And on the other hand, we'll have another person in our life, maybe a child, a colleague, a system, where we know that it has shortcomings. So, do we let go of that person or the child who has shortcomings? No, we build systems around it in order to make sure that it will not fail. Which one do you think is the most dangerous? The perfect system or the not so perfect system? It's not a trick question. Anyone? How many people would think the perfect system is a better one to go with?
Yes.
Sorry, say that again. Most people would say that I would rather choose a perfect system over the not so perfect system, right? But I would say, think again. The not so perfect system, we build systems around it, checks and balances to ensure that it will not fail. Whereas a perfect system, there is no such thing. Even if it's been given a 99% accuracy, over large number of iterations, it may fail. And that is where the danger lies. We must always treat every system as an imperfect system and build all the checks and balances to ensure that it doesn't fail. Because can you afford for the self-driving car to make a mistake? Have you all heard about the moral dilemma? Where if a self-driving car has to choose between a grandmother and a child, it doesn't have a choice. It has to crash in one place. Which one would it choose? If it has to choose between an animal and an old person, which one to choose? I know that a lot of people may have a ready answer here, but those are all ethical dilemmas, right? But in order to circumvent the dilemmas, it's important to build systems around in the AI model from the start. Security, a very, very big one, right? The data privacy. When I look around me, I see all these educated people, including myself, and I think we don't care about our data. We are happily volunteering all our data for free with or without a consent. You know, we don't care how our data is being used. We don't realize that this data is being sold to third parties. It is deciding what premium you will pay. It is deciding, whether you'll get that medical insurance or not. It is making so many important decisions. We are getting marketing advertisements, thrown at us, all because we don't understand that our data is ours and not to be just taken without our permission and be sold. I want to give you a personal example. A couple of years back, we had bought a doll for my daughter. I have a young daughter, and we bought a smart doll for her from Germany. So I consider myself very, very educated, right? And be very careful that my Alexa is listening to me, my phone is listening to me. But yet I get this doll, but she's from Germany. So I think that, okay, we have really stringent laws, and all she's doing is talking to my daughter, understanding, and talking back to her, and I like pink, and I like this, and I like that. Last year, I was reading an article which said that the same doll, Kyla, had been withdrawn from the European market after the GDPR had come in, because not only was a doll talking to my daughter, she was actually listening to conversations in the house, and that information was being sold to third party companies for marketing. I find that scary that, today when educated people are not aware, what happens to the rest of the world? We need to have laws to protect the people. We need to have a conscience, and hope that companies have consciences so that they can build more ethical AI applications. And three, we need to have, AI literacy, because everybody today is on a connected device, right? So I really think this is a very big one. Transparency. When we are making an AI model, it is very important that it is transparent. When we say it is transparent, we mean that people understand what the intended use for that product was, who is it made for, what information. Yeah, go ahead. Somebody
Uh,
had to say
uh,
something?
no, I think that was by mistake. The participant has turned on the mic.
Okay, sorry. So I think it's important that when somebody makes an AI model, uh, it's very clear what the purpose is, who is it made for, what the data is going to be, what data is being used, how is a model working, and the company has an obligation of sharing, that if any outcome is being predicted, how are they reaching that outcome? A lot of big tech companies want to protect themselves, saying that this is my proprietary source code and I do not want to share it. But if those proprietary source codes are making a decision of how much time you're going to spend in jail or what job you're going to get, I think there has to be a transparency and a law to protect the consumer. In the GDPR in Europe, there's an Article 22 which says, it's a very narrow definition, that if any AI is autonomously making decisions, then it has to be transparent. It has to abide by the five proponents of AI. That law is slightly different if it is not making an autonomous decision. Another interesting thing I would like to share with you, did you know that in China, uh, China being a communist country is extremely transparent? All the people in China know that they are being surveilled 24 by 7. They know that they are given a credit worthiness score. And they know that if they do not abide by the laws, that credit worthiness score comes down. And then basic rights of theirs are taken away. They will not be allowed to take a plane, they'll not be allowed to take a train, they'll not be given access to a certain amenities if they do not abide by it. They're completely transparent. On the other hand, in the US, a credit score is given to every individual. The only difference is the people don't know. The people don't know on what basis they're being given. They don't know why certain privileges are being taken away, because it's a flawed system. Because it are not, it's not one size, applies to all. What are we going to do in India? How are we going to have the governance to protect our people? That is what we need to think about. Here, I want to touch upon some of the hows. We know that we have to have these five proponents, for AI ethics. But in order to make it work, what do we have? What do we need? We need design thinking. If we follow design thinking, where we put the user at the center of our application and say that this is a person we are making this AI model for, this is who it's going to benefit, then you are thinking empathetically and designing a robust AI model. I think that, as a gentleman in the beginning said, that who decides what is ethics is value alignment, right? The person at the top. The team who we choose have to align their ethics to the community that they are serving. They have to build awareness in the team from the company owner right to the user that, this is what we are building and we are going to be transparent about it. Every single person on the team is accountable. Just because you wrote that code and you made a mistake, are you the person who's responsible? No, it's from the person who decided that this is an application we need in the market, to the person who designed the UI UX, to the person who collected the data. Every person is accountable, when you make an AI model. Another thing that one can do in order to mitigate the biases is by having diversity in the teams. When you have diversity in the teams, the chances of you hitting a blind spot are lower. It's not a perfect system, but I think that self-reflection, which comes again back to the definition of ethical AI, really helps in building a more robust system. The ethnic canvas is a resource that I like to share with you. It's like a Padlet that I found that when one is designing an AI model, what are the different parameters that one should be looking at. I think that this was all that I had today for my talk. It was a little short and sweet, but these are some of the resources that I would like to share with you all. One is the ethnic canvas. I'll just show it to you real quick. Sorry, I'm just, can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Ethicscanvas.org.
Yeah, so I'll also be sharing this with the participants today. This is a really nice mind map for the team when they're making an AI model, for them to see that they are actually looking at all aspects in order to have a robust AI ethical model. This is one thing that I wanted to share with everyone. And another really nice tool that I find for teaching, which is very effective in my classes, is survival of the best fit. This is an example of a recruiting app which was made on the basis of the Amazon recruiting app. And because there were so many inbuilt biases, by playing this game, you notice how unknown biases creep in and you make faulty recruiting decisions. So I think this is a really nice teaching tool that one can use in the classroom, which is why I put in here. Uh, a very good documentary that I think that everyone should watch is A Coded Bias. It's on Netflix. It is again made by, on the basis of the work that Joy Bolami did, from MIT Research Labs. And there was another lady called Kathy O'Neill who's written a fabulous book called The War on Math Destruction, where our belief that anything that is mathematical and scientific can be flawless, not true. You have to put in the socio-economic aspect also in order to make the predictions. And the last one that I thought was really nice is the moral machine. This is from MIT Media Labs, which makes us really, really ponder that, how are we ethically sort of aligned, when we have to make choices beforehand. See, when we are in a car and we are driving and an accident is about to happen, the decisions we make are more impulsive. But when you are making AI models which are going to have predetermined outcomes, who decides what is right and what is wrong? I don't know the answer to this, but it is a reflective tool that can be used in the classrooms. That's it from me from now. If anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer it.